Okay,
Trying to
so
get Cougar to get in
chapters.
on one of these.
That would be excellent.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Chapters 15 and 16. Both relatively short chapters. I liked this exploration of the five strengths she takes us through. I, once again, just something I hadn't super sat down and contemplated thoroughly before. The five strengths, which come down to she lists them. Strong determination with the familiarization of teachings, the seed of goodness, the practice of reproach, and the power of aspiration. These are the five ways the warrior increases confidence and inspiration.
Uh,
I know.
I wish
Uh,
she talked like that.
I don't think Pema does.
No,
I've
I don't think
never
so.
I've never heard her speak, but I suspect that's not how she talks. Um,
But you talk like it, and that's all that matters.
that's all that matters. So strong determination is our commitment to use our lives to dissolve the indifference, aggression, and grasping that separate us from one another. And she does this. She takes us through a bit by bit, kind of explains them and how we can catch ourselves and our thoughts. And especially with the strong determination to catch ourselves before bad practices solidify is pretty useful. She said, yeah, how do we catch our thoughts before they become 100% believable and solidify us against them? Which is absolutely a difficult part of the work, right? I am constantly finding ways to separate myself from other people, in no small part because there's a part of me that just doesn't like other people, wants to be alone forever.
Mm.
That's fair. I mean, we all have that natural tendency to like try and classify as a way to, uh, well, save us from having to evaluate every new person we meet thoroughly.
Yeah,
Uh,
we want to do the easy, lazy part of just putting them into categories, right? Like,
and to an extent, that makes sense because, like, why am I going to spend 5 hours analyzing this person I'm sitting next to at a bus stop? Like, it, no, I don't need to do that. But
no.
but also, I do need to acknowledge and respect their personhood and identity as an individual with life, with all of those things, just like I have. But
Right.
even just giving them that much consideration is unusual.
Mm-hmm. And I
But
think.
yeah, like
Mm-hmm.
no one really addresses that. It's interesting that Pema's like, hey, you know, maybe maybe you should stop writing everyone off as a concept.
Yeah, and I think that's a good way of putting it. Oop, oop, whoop. Familiarization is the strength that comes to us when we take the teachings to heart, become familiar with them by using them over and over. Yes, that makes sense. That does define familiarization. Um, I like that she reiterates that our day-to-day life is the practice, the whether it's pleasant, it's unpleasant, or simply mundane, as she puts it.
Right.
Um, I think one of the things I have to remind myself is that I don't have to do anything fancy to really practice, right? I don't have to go on a retreat or um, attend some event. This is a very simplistic practice when it comes down to it, right? You can do it anywhere with anyone at any time. Giving it its appropriate recognition in that way and saying this is worthwhile work even when it's not glamorous is um, I don't know, just something important to keep in the back of the mind, at least for me. Boop, boop. Somebody honk the horn outside. Oh, goodness. And then she takes us through. As one of the slogans says, all activities should be done with one intention. That intention is to realize our connection with all beings. Good reminder. Awesome stuff. Like that, right? And she takes us on a pleasant little antidote, as she does occasionally in her chapters, is how she got a particular letter where reality was that she was to blame for a situation, but her instinct was to blame someone else, to push that blame aside and be like, hey, I could never be at fault for this. And then her experience at the pool was to recognize that this was a behavior she was falling back into from the work and that it's hard. Um, but to push it aside and to allow herself to go down that path was where unhappiness lies, right? And but it's the easy one. But you can't just ignore them. You got to acknowledge them. You got to work with them as we move forward. I like how she puts it. Let's see. I also acknowledge my thoughts, listening to what I was saying about myself and others. Um, and as it's been put in several other chapters, like even in those moments where you've messed up and you recognize it, you got to extend your loving kindness not just to the other people in the situation, but to yourself, right? Um, I think it's easy to feel like because at least for me, given my history and my sad times as a child, right? If I mess up, there are so many different things going on in my brain, and I don't recognize it immediately. But on some level, I've I believe I know I do, and this is work I have to do, right? That when I mess up, somewhere inside of me believes that I'm worth less at that moment, right? Like that I have lost worth as a human being because I've made a fault of my own.
Absolutely, I can so much empathize with that.
And so you got to extend that loving kindness to say, no, I'm still a worthwhile human, right, Ben? And
And
it's
that's a skill and probably most of us still need to practice and develop. Yeah.
well, and it sounds like on some level earlier in the chat, here in the Discord, you are doing that on some level, right? Like
Oh yeah.
disentangling other people, like situations from your sense of worth as a person.
Oh yeah. I'm working on that, but I feel I have a ways to go in that direction still.
Mm-hmm. Hello, Lee.
Hello. Sorry I'm late.
Welcome.
I overslept.
How dare? No one ever does that here. We're still on chapter 15, just like a little bit in, not very far.
I only read like the first 2 pages.
That's
I
okay.
I didn't get far this week.
That's
I intended to read it
okay.
this morning so it'd be fresh, and then
Mm-hmm.
I did not wake up. So
Well, they're a cute. It's a good little chapter, going through these strengths that she presents to us. And we were just talking about acknowledging your reaction to certain things. Here she talks about the reaction to a situation that on her end she didn't communicate enough, didn't provide enough understanding for people, so something went wrong, right? And instead of acknowledging that, she tried to shift the blame at first. And that's a different situation, but I think also in these situations, I personally, if I were, similarly at fault, I tend towards, blaming myself. Like I will jump so fast blaming myself, but it also is not a kindness to myself. It's not the healthy kind of recognizing I've made a mistake. No, no, no. I am suddenly worth so much less as a human being in that moment. Like I am really beating myself up, which she gets into a little bit in chapter 16, I think. But so, anyway, she eventually, embraces those emotions, and finds the soft spot, her reservoir of empathy for the situation, for herself, and for her brothers and sisters. So I like the persistent use of that phrase of finding the soft spot. I think that it is a very sweet way of talking about the practice. Um, and especially after all of the things she walks us through in this book, I personally find it a very clear way of talking about it, you know?
I
Because,
agreed. It
yeah.
fits very well because, yeah, I mean, the word soft is right in there, so it kind of points to that whole compassion thing and whatnot.
Right. I agree. And she does take a moment to say, hey, that's not going to work every time. Sometimes there's no reward, right? You stay with the sorrow, and it's not immediately a gratifying process like that. And I think that that's a very helpful thing to have in a book like this as a reader, personally. She recognizes that sometimes this is not a it's going to work every time, and if it doesn't work for you, you're failing. I always like that about Pima. I feel very taken care of as a student while reading her work, I'll say. Oh, yeah, so she gets to the third source of inspiration here is the seed of goodness. And I like that sometimes remembering our basic, oops, stupid highlighter. Oh well. Sometimes remembering our basic goodness takes a leap of faith. And in that probably relates more to my sense of what I was talking about, where I'm like, I failed as a person, I'm garbage. um, Sometimes it helps find little ways the seed manifests in our lives. So it can be fleeting, but it also strengthens our confidence. So I like that quite a bit. Do, do, do. She once again reinforces the idea that we have to put this practice into motion, not just when it's easy, but when we're in these moments of distress as well. Um, and she
And
asks
that's
the question, how can I use this suffering and this joy as a vehicle for transformation? Yeah. What was that, Ben?
I was just wanting to add that, yeah, I mean, these distressful moments are the important teachers, but yeah, how I mean, I tend to not look at them or run away from them or only look at them after I have avoided them for some time.
Mm-hmm. Um, yeah, I do that too. Sorry, I'm writing something down real quick. Okay, I did that. The fourth strength is reproach, which I thought was a weird strength at first, and then I read about it and I was like, okay, that's fine. And I think it's very true that it can be something tricky and can backfire if there's no Maitri. Maitri? I don't want to say that. She really goes into that back in chapter 12, which is that just a really deep dive into loving kindness.
Self-compassion, I think, is it, no?
Yeah, it is a form of self-compassion. With the equanimity and the let's see, what else was there? I'm flipping through chapter 12 real quick. Uh, the hope and fear, pleasure and pain. Oh yes, that was cool. The equanimity where it had those big swings of seemingly dualities. Yeah, that was a good chapter. Anyway, yeah, so it's the strength that if used with loving kindness, it will steer us away from debilitating habitual patterns. Very true. Have I ever done this before? I like the push for self reflection here. I need that a lot, um, especially as a teacher. when I interact with my students, I have to slow down quite a bit, especially if they're not reacting the way either that I really want them to react or the way that would be healthy for them to react. I have to consider what method am I using? Why am I doing it this way? Am I reacting out of a place of kindness or out of a place of aggravation? You know?
Mm.
And it can be really easy as a teacher to just react out of a place of emotional aggravation. Because I just want the students to do what I need them to do, right? Like, I just. Why are they being difficult? But to expand that loving kindness to myself, to them, um, requires a delicate balance of approach. So reading through this was, I guess, affirming not that I'm doing what I need to do, but that at least I have recognized what I need to do, and I'm gonna try to continue to get there. You know, I say all that, and do not think that Des is some amazing teacher, because she's not.
I think you're amazing.
Yeah, you haven't sat in on any of my classes. Yeah, you let me know how you think about that when you get to listen to some of my sassy students.
See, there you go, Tess. Being hard on yourself.
I am. And then I'm like also judging them. I'm not like expanding the ah, bark bark
I'm
bark.
gonna close my door. Hold on.
Fight the dogs.
Eli,
Bark
hush.
bark bark. Ah, and we just talked about this earlier in the chapter, right? Really seeing people as people and not just these obstacles or uh what stereotypes of any kind. So I it's so easy to put the students in these little molds, right? Ah, this is a trouble student, or this is an okay student, or this is my favorite student. you know, like, and those are fewer and further between, I'll tell you. But I should make all the students my favorite student. That would be a great mentality if I could get there. Oh, I need to slow my brain down. About to go on a rant. Anyway.
Well, it's difficult too, right? That you have this format. Ideally, you could tailor a lesson to each person's best way, and the best method for teaching
That would
one
be
student
lovely.
is typically not the best for another. And they could be
Yeah.
smaller groups, right? You could find something that works well for 5 different people who all learn in a similar way or have, coming from a more similar place
Mm-hmm.
to approach the material. But when you have 25, 30, 80,
Mm-hmm.
120 in some places, I mean, how
Oof.
could you possibly even
Yeah.
it seems impossible entirely, even if you were very lucky to get an entire room full of people that are all coming from the same place and also who require the same approach.
Right.
So you can't beat yourself up for that either.
Oh, if only. I wish they all required the same approach. Anyway. Oh, I thought it was delightful. She says that Trungpa Rinpoche encouraged his students to be eccentric bodhisattvas and to give ego a hard time. I found this just a particularly delightful little mental image to work with. He's just instead of listening to the radio or singing in the shower, we talk to our ego. Okay, ego, you've been giving me problems for my entire life, and now I'm getting a whole lot smarter. I'm not gonna be under your sway for one more day. I think talking out loud like that can be very therapeutic. I'm definitely talking to my brain in that way, which I think I just use the word brain in place of ego sometimes. Um, I'm like, all right, brain, stop it. Stop this thing. I don't know what's going on.
I feel awkward talking to myself.
Yeah?
I mean, part of it feels it's like almost performative, but I'm the only one in the audience.
You can talk to your
'Cause I-
dog.
Yeah, but that's a different context. I talk to my dog anyway, and I feel nothing like awkward about that.
Yeah. No, I
But
get
if
you. It does feel
you know,
performative if you're not naturally inclined to do it.
It's to the point where other people talk to themselves around me, and I think they're talking to me because it doesn't occur to me that someone would talk to themselves. Like you could just think the thoughts. You don't have to say them.
I get it.
Wait, so is the weird part the verbalization of it, or
Yes.
is it also weird if they say these words inside their head?
Oh no, it's just the verbalization of it.
I don't
Interesting.
think the verbalization is absolutely necessary. I mean, she isn't explicit about whether to say it out loud or just in your head. I mean, it could be either way.
Right.
Yeah.
I
Right.
think her idea, it seems to be to utilize these moments where you're not really doing anything else to cultivate this dialogue within yourself, right?
Right.
Which makes
It's
sense.
a great time because it's not like you're doing anything else anyway. But
See, this
yeah,
is
no,
why
it's
people have longer showers than I'm capable of like conceptualizing.
mm, hmm
I I'm in and out of the shower in like 10 minutes.
damn. Wow.
And
It's at
then
least a half hour for me.
yeah, same for my husband. And then I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
what are you even doing in
I used to shower at least 15 minutes every day, but now I don't really have a shower anymore, so I stopped doing that, and it's been great for my skin.
do you have a way to bathe at all?
I have a bathtub now, yeah.
Oh,
I mean,
okay.
it's rather small, but yeah, I mean, that has really changed my habit because I only go in the bath like once or maybe twice a week tops, and
Yeah. Ah, the natural
that's
oils on your skin have time to do their job instead of
Right.
being scalded off
absolutely,
every day.
absolutely, yeah.
That's probably a smart way to do it. I know. I know. Tangent. I know hair care has a similar like true methodology to it of like you're not supposed to shampoo your hair every day so the natural oils can keep your hair healthy and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that just doesn't really work for me because I mean, I tried that a while ago to just like wash my hair every other day or so, but yeah, it just gets greasy. It just doesn't work.
Ah, yeah, yeah.
It doesn't work as well for shorter hair, and I think
Ah,
a lot of times, if you have more testosterone as well, it will produce more oil, so it can be a little bit more difficult. But like I
interesting.
have really long hair, and I can't wash my hair every day, or it gets like really, really, really dry. But my hair also doesn't get very oily, so I
Mhm.
just brush it, and unless I'm cooking, like unless I'm deep frying or something every day, which I don't do, it's usually at least 2 or 3 days before my hair gets any like visible oil or oily hair smell or anything. So it
Mhm.
is really interesting. Like genetics must be some part of that as well.
Well, I inadvisably shower every day because after being in a school filled with children, I feel icky. And
Oh
so
my
when I
gosh,
come
yeah.
home, I take a shower. I don't always shampoo my hair, but I always like rinse off because I just feel gross.
That's totally understandable.
I would do the same. I would do the same thing. Yeah. Anytime I go outside and I work at home now, so I don't
Ah.
have to. I still usually will shower, but I don't wash my hair in the
Mhm.
shower.
Mhm.
But if I worked in a school or even visited a school, I would.
I even
Yeah.
looked at a school.
If I even
I
walked
just
by
looked
the
at a school
school.
today and I knew I was covered in germs that exact moment.
Mm-hmm.
Ah,
Oh
children
man,
are gross.
They
Anyway,
truly
children
are.
are very gross.
no matter what age they are, the high schoolers are so gross. Anyway, that's a whole. Anyway,
Sometimes
sorry.
the high schoolers are grosser.
Ugh.
I've seen things.
I see things every week. So Dharma. Uh,
That's right.
uh. Oh, I thought it was hilarious. This little anecdote of like he sees a big bag of flour, starts to take it, and then yells at himself for being a thief. And I was like, that's so absurd. I get the point. But how silly. Got the thief! I've got him red-handed! And other people are
Like
like,
he said that part to other people. That's the.
yeah, he
That's
shouted
the.
it. Other people ran. We're like, oh, a thief! And he was like, it's
Uh-huh.
me.
I'm the thief.
But I get it. It's just, it was so silly. And then he does the same thing with some yogurt, and he calls himself a yogurt addict, which I think in many ways this was a more not more practical, a more applicable lesson in some ways of recognizing his strong, I don't know, not reaction to the yogurt, but he observed others receiving yogurt, had a strong emotional reaction to people he felt were getting too much yogurt because he wanted yogurt. And then when it came to be his turn just denied himself the yogurt. And in some ways, I thought that that was such an interesting exercise to do with yourself, right?
Yeah.
Like, I really want this thing. I'm even having negative emotions to other people because I think I might not get this thing. And so now I'm going to not reward myself with this thing. And I think that that can be a valuable exercise because genuinely it teaches your like I don't know, it just punishes your ego. I don't know how to put it other than it reminds me of like swatting a misbehaving like child, like not on the butt, like you slap their hand away from a cookie. Swatting, not like no, not till after dinner. But in some ways he was like no yogurt until my ego learns to not react this way. Anyway, at least I think so. I My interpretation.
I think that's right too. It does seem really silly too. the the thought of this guy just saying these things to everybody around him is the thing that's like.
But what a lovely level of freaking confidence that I would love to have, right? To just be able to say, no, Des, no yogurt for you, and not care if someone heard me do that. Oh, yes, the point of reproach is to develop enough self respect that when we catch ourselves being hooked in familiar ways, we can stop. So, yeah, that's a nice little summary of something that was more absurd. Yeah. Loop, where are we?
I maybe before we move on from that page,
Mm-hmm.
think it's important to note this was a slightly unexpected sentence following, but when actually it's the whole next paragraph. The point of reproach is to develop enough self-respect that when we catch ourselves getting hooked in familiar ways, we can stop. We
Mm-hmm.
aren't disciplining our badness, we're simply getting smart about what brings suffering and what brings happiness. And this one kind of caught
Yeah.
me. We're
Mm-hmm.
finally giving ourselves a break.
Mm-hmm.
That wasn't the way I expected that paragraph to end.
Yeah.
That
Hmm.
that I it's the whole thing. So that it's self-respect to be able to identify and then prevent this repeated behavior in whatever context.
Mm-hmm.
That we're improving ourselves, and that also by doing that, we're giving ourselves a break, which, thinking about it, does make sense. If you are identifying what's bringing suffering and instead choosing something that will bring happiness, you are giving yourself a break. But
Mm-hmm.
that kind of struck me as, huh. It gave me pause for a moment and said, okay, let me reread this.
Yeah. You're right. Excellent. Nice. Strength number 5. Aspiration. Aspiration. When we don't feel ready to act, but even in very so I will say that I've been kind of delirious most of the day from fatigue. So while I have read this before, my brain is like, oh, hey, I read that. Oh, yeah, I remember that now. So I apologize. I I had a very disrupted sleep schedule last night. We can do something to help. We can aspire to arouse bodhicitta to free ourselves from neurosis and be of benefit. Ah, yes, my eternal goal. Free myself from my neurosis.
Mm.
Always a desk goal. Right here. We can aspire to find the warrior's strength and ability to love. Um, I like that the fifth strength is really just encouraging. You can do it. Aspire for these things. Um, oh my gosh, I think I'm caught up on that because I've been kind of having a kick myself in the butt feeling for a lot of the week. And then sometimes with these books, it feels more like a reprimanding. And so Pema does a great job of one, here's the lesson. Yes, we all need to get better, but also take your time and you can do it. Go you. You know what I mean? And so I never feel preemptively fatigued when jumping into her writing. Some writing, I'm like, oh, I don't want to read that. That's going to be a whole thing. But maybe I put too much. I probably just, I do too much. I'm sorry. Uh, I
You
hope
can
other.
always start reading and then stop. Even if it's only one sentence in.
Oh, oh, I wish. My brain. My brain doesn't like that. I've started the chapter. I must finish the chapter.
I used to feel like that, but eventually I found that I wasn't. There were a lot of things that I wasn't reading at all, and
Mhm.
truthfully, if you haven't read it at all, you don't really know. And some of them ended up being very good.
Mhm.
So I found if I just give myself permission to not finish. Also with movies, because I used to watch movies that were. I
Mm.
mean, I wasn't a big movie watcher, but if somebody else put on a movie and then it's like, oh well, we started it, we have to finish, and now we just say like, why? If we know that
Right.
it's not good and it's not worth our time, why are we spending that extra like hour
Permission
and
to
20
end it.
minutes or
Yeah.
whatever? And so now we stop much sooner. But for books, that was harder for me. And it's the same thing applies. Sometimes if you just say, instead, oh, I'm going to read this book, you say, well, I'm going to see what this book has to say.
Mhm.
And maybe right now is not the right time. Or maybe it isn't, it may turn out to be something different than what you're anticipating as well, in a good way or a bad way. It may
Yeah.
beat you up a little bit, and maybe the timing is wrong, and to be able to put it down and say, well, I'll come back to this
Mhm.
after I've done some other things, or after I read some other books maybe, or
Mhm. No, no, you're right. I just it's one of those things I struggle with and I've gotten
yes.
better and I continue to get better. It just
I know your pain. I have been there, but the last couple of years I've somehow finally managed to pick
Excellent.
something up and not
Ooh.
have to finish it completely. So
Lee over here being all fancy. The ability
if we
to
call that fancy, I can put the book down. Yes.
Yes. All right. So this next segment was really depressing for me. Um anecdotally for myself. So she writes this anecdote of this dude hearing a woman screaming on the street, and just the like last week someone got shot in my neighborhood, and I could hear their like mom screaming her lungs out from like the other block. And so in this moment it was a very weird sensation that my heart went out to this person this dude was referring to in her screams, like fourth hand anecdote over here because I had just experienced kind of having a similar, like hearing somebody suffering, and I don't know that I fully embraced, being vulnerable in that moment, but I did not fully block it out either when it happened. And it was a difficult time because, I've recently had a child. And so for the first time, listening to a mother grieve in that heart wrenching way, and then also be holding a child was very, I don't know. It was really weird.
Understandable.
Hmm.
So anyway, this particular segment for me was a weird experience. And then so he felt better her than me. I did not think that. I just was like real sad about the whole thing. But anyway, better her than me. But I have felt that way about situations when I've like, I don't know. I'll go for a really easy one like, "Oh no, they fell down. I'm glad it was them and not me." Like,
Okay.
we'll go for a less extreme um antidote there. And then yeah, but then it takes work. You have to realize that you put up that barrier in order to take it down. So the five strengths, she summarizes them: cultivating strong determination and commitment to relate openly, building familiarization with the practices, watering the seeds of bodhicitta in both delightful and miserable situations, using kindness and humor, and
So much.
aspiring for all of us that suffering and its seeds diminish, and that wisdom and compassion increase. Which is a lovely little summary at the end of the chapter. And then we can talk about chapter 16 and laziness, which I'm like, oh no, I do this. I do the lazy.
Oh yeah.
No, don't call me out, Pima. No.
No.
No. um she starts out, laziness is a common human trait. Don't I know it? But then she's gonna go into three types, uh, which she does very kindly, honestly. Doesn't really. Anyway, so the first kind is comfort orientation, which I immediately was like, oh my gosh, that's the type of laziness I struggle with a ton. Which is we want to take a rest, to give ourselves a break, but soothing ourselves and becomes a habit, right? And then when we become jaded and lazy, which um, I think it's also probably important to recognize the difference between falling into the trap of comfort orientation versus depression. Um, but maybe that's taking it a little too far. Anyway, she's like, if it's raining, we drive half a block rather than walk and get wet. Uh, so right before I read this paragraph, I had just gone, it's kind of hot in my office, and turned the fan on, and
Wow.
then suddenly I was reading the sentence, at the first hint of heat, we turn on the air conditioner, and I was like, ah, dang.
Huh.
That me.
This is an interesting one because I don't do a lot of these things, but I also don't think of it as being in touch with the texture of life, as she says.
Yeah.
It it is I don't know. It feels like a very different thing. I also don't think of those things as necessarily. I guess this is her expanding the term laziness
Mm-hmm.
to encompass quite or to generalize these different areas, but it wasn't what I was expecting comfort laziness to be, or like comfort orientation, because when I first read the word comfort orientation, I had in my mind certain things that I do, which
Mm-hmm.
I have a, for me, I struggle a lot with taking care of myself physically,
Mm.
and like it always seems really hard for me to tell, okay, because I'm bad at that, am I is doing this taking care of myself, or at what point is that going too far? And I feel that I don't have a very maybe like objective view of what things I should do and what things are maybe a luxury or
Mm-hmm.
kind of maybe my perspective is a little off. And so I'm reading these things and like I don't turn the heat up when I'm cold most of the time. And I don't put on the AC. I mean, until it gets to be like 90 degrees in my studio, I kind of
Yeah.
just suffer through it until it gets to the point where I'm going, I can no longer actually do my work very well because it is so hot and it's impacting this. Oh, it's 87. Maybe I should think about turning on the AC. No wonder
um,
it's getting uncomfortably, hard to focus. Um,
I think that pushed to an extreme can be one of these types of laziness, but not this first one actually. The other two that she gets into, one is the loss of heart and one is the couldn't care less, as she puts it. And I almost and I think that sort of behavior in an extreme, not saying that what you do is the extreme, but there is an extreme. And it could be the either of those two depending on it's where it's manifesting from. uh, because it's not connecting with your needs, right? You're not being necessary. Like it's easy to take if you go into that extreme, you're not being kind to yourself. You're not expanding the loving kindness. And so in some ways, yes, that is a type of laziness, right? Because you're not slowing down enough to see like I would really benefit from a slight adjustment of my environment, right? Or if I just ate something, my body would feel better, you know?
mm-hmm.
And in its own extreme, those are not good tendencies either. Which,
Yeah,
sorry,
I was expecting to be admonished in this chapter, but then I didn't really. I don't know. And
I
then,
mean,
then it wasn't what I thought it was going to be, and now I'm just thinking, well, I know that some of these things I'm doing are still problematic, but
yeah,
maybe for a different reason. Because it
yeah.
also isn't characterized by this kind of what was the second one about kind of self-loathing or something
It is called loss of
or
heart. Yeah. So it's done here. Loss
sense
of
of
heart. We feel a sense of
poor me.
hopelessness, poor me. Yep. Poverty stricken, that we aren't up in dealing with the world, which to me more like depression.
Oh yeah, we're saying to ourselves, I'm the worst, there's no hope for me, I'll never get it right. And I never say that kind of stuff to myself. But
Uh, I can get there when I have let down somebody my mind perceives to be an authority over me. Um,
mm.
if if like for instance, if my principal were to be like, I'm just really disappointed in you, Des. Oh my gosh, I would not recover for like a month. Like just at least like that would be the bare minimum time frame of how hard that would hit me of just I'm a piece of shit.
Oh no.
And I know this about myself, and I frequently, if I even suspect somebody I respect or is an authority over me is going to say something semi-negative to me, I have to like do a lot of mental preparation if I even think that conversation's about to happen, so that I can hopefully, prevent some of that result in my mind. Oh. But that's because Des's brain is broken sometimes. Here I am. Oh. Do, do, do. Oh, even if we manage to, yeah, somebody in their hot studio, but instead of just fixing it because I guess it's time to turn on the AC, they're like sense of shame about it. Like, I'm weak, I had to turn on the air conditioner. That's a little extreme. But, uh, yeah. Oh, gosh. In my mind, though, by the time I finished reading about the second kind of loss of heart, I also thought about how when I push myself to the extent of burnout, that's not extending loving kindness to myself either because I'm not recognizing my limitations or respecting them. And so I just as another way of seeing that, that's what I wanted to share was that I thought that that could also be seen as not, working within your limitations. Couldn't care less is one I actually don't experience a lot because I care too much about a lot of things. I want to give the world a finger. That's actually hashtag goals for Des. um, I would love to throw some of my softness and vulnerability in some days. Obviously, that's not part of the work. Not a good idea. Don't do that. I'm not advising that for anyone. But there are days where I go to the other extreme and the crushing weight of reality is too much. Uh, and so, but overall, of this idea of she puts it as these three. What is she? Where is it? There are three habitual methods that human beings use for relating to laziness or any troubling emotion. These are attacking, indulging, and ignoring. Which yes, those are top tier methodology for dealing with difficult situations. Top tier. Do, do, do. Share words if you have any.
No.
I'm gonna skip down here to something else. Let's see, where's my highlighter? There's my highlighter. Do. With bodhicitta training, we practice not resisting the resistance, touching in with the fundamental tenderness and groundlessness of our being before it hardens. We do this with the clear intention that our ego clinging diminish and our wisdom and compassion increase. Yes, that's what we want. So, get curious about the three kinds of laziness and use it in your training as a method to further tenderness and let go of ego clinging instead of letting yourself indulge or ignore or condemn. Which, yes, does struggle with that a lot. um, So Ben came in here and mentioned something, and then I asked him what he meant by that, and it's just something that I have never called this, but I've done. It was the shadow work. I've seen other people in the server refer to it as well, and I think that if you are practicing shadow work or this idea of investigating your behavior or thought patterns, then I think you're doing effectively what this chapter recommends. If you're investigating those emotions and trying to develop new strategies for how you associate with them, then you are you're doing it. You're doing the work this chapter wants you to do. You can ask yourself questions like, why am I suffering? Why does this nothing lighten up? Why do my dissatisfaction and boredom get stronger year over year? Those are other questions you can ask yourself. But generally, I think asking why am I suffering and why is this particular thing causing suffering
Mm,
can be important.
absolutely.
Um, Fear of inconvenience was a new thought that I liked. We talked about that earlier. The inconvenience of my hot office. And following the ongoing progress. Tonglin again, I believe that was chapter 9. Chapter 9 was Tonglin fully expounded and defined. Um, she does say it's not terrible or wonderful. Laziness just is a basic living quality that deserves to be experienced just as it is. Perhaps we'll find it irritating, pulsating quality in laziness. We might feel it as dull and heavy or as vulnerable and raw. Whatever we discover as we explore it further, we find nothing to hold on to, nothing solid, only groundless, wakeful energy. And I think that's really important. Not assigning, a quality of good or bad. Oh gosh, I didn't mean to just draw a line in the middle of everything. Not assigning a good or bad quality to any of this, right? Because I would say in our Western culture, absolutely, you know, that laziness is something we're like, that's a negative thing. That's a bad thing. Bad. Don't be lazy. Bad. And
The
just,
enemy of productivity.
yes, the enemy. Fight it. Fight the power. But don't cling to it. Don't hold on to it. Just, feel it and do the work. Anybody else have a thought to share? I'm kind of done.
I also like the sentence in the last paragraph. It unlocks a tremendous energy that is usually blocked by our habit of running away.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Because I've seen that. Well, I generally now tend not to run away from things and want to, like, oh, I see it. I want to fix it now. but I see this very, very much in, like, pretty much everyone around me. And it's so. Well, one, watching them finally get over it, it absolutely changes the energy. But when people are, engaging in a lot of these behaviors and avoiding the things that are difficult,
Mm-hmm.
that are right there, it's so hard to watch. It's so hard to watch. But if you just addressed that, why would, you don't have to carry that around with you every day. Like
Right.
like this weight that you're just dragging just because you're not looking at it. It's still there.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So it's a good sentence.
Mm-hmm. I like it too. Max, any thoughts?
No, I think this was
No.
good. We had a good time.
Are you enlightened yet?
Yes.
Awesome. Go team.
Yeah.
Mission accomplished.
Woo! Another week of
Yay.
enlightenment. Go us.
We did it.